Hey there, welcome back to my channel. You're watching part 12 of the video series I prepared in which I present you with the content of my TLK essay titled Deconstructing the Human Condition, of which, again, you can find the full text on my WordPress blog, which is erikvandepoel.wordpress.com. In this episode, I'm going to read to you a section of chapter 11 of that essay, which is about the natural sciences. Here goes. Both physical and philosophical advances in technology have, sometimes literally, with tools like microscopes and telescopes, magnified our powers of observation, but creative imagination, a different way of looking at previously established scientific facts, and mathematics, the need to express scientific law in unequivocal mathematical terms, play a key role as well. On top of that, we need to take into account that many scientific discoveries and the mathematical theories to give rise to or support these discoveries are typically rather counterintuitive, defying untutored common sense. For instance, science today still struggles to conclusively explain the origins and pinpoint the exact whereabouts of a naturally ubiquitous force like gravitation, which seemingly effortlessly keeps you in your seat or on your feet. In other words, science neither knows nor for certain what it is, nor where and how it started, whereas many of us accept gravity as just being there and always doing its job without ever taking a break or a sick day. And the same opaque veil of inexplicability encapsulates several other garden variety forces of nature like electricity and magnetism. To lend a wider context to this factuality, you are invited to wrap your head around the actuality that, as we speak, our beloved blue home planet is spinning around its own axis at a rather pedestrian 1600 kilometers an hour and hurtling through space in its solar orbit at an unhurried 107,200 kilometers an hour without any of us being involuntarily catapulted into the void. Now, is that magic or is it science? However, as we have established in chapter 3 of this essay, there are inherent drawbacks and limitations to human perception, and in that light, the empire of the natural sciences is no exception. The phenomenon of input selectivity implies that by missing out on relevant details, the perceived outcome of any scientific experiment may potentially be adversely affected. In a branch like theoretical quantum physics, the observer effect, whereby the very act of observing literally alters the properties of experimental specimens being observed, on account of the seemingly magical find that elemental particles apparently change shape from particle to wave and back again when under close scrutiny. And this has been known to compromise the structural integrity of laboratory samples in scientifically inexplicable ways that initially led to the invalidation of experimental finds that were believed to support quantum theory. The spectre of confirmation bias looms whenever validation of a scientific hypothesis is at stake. To complicate matters further, the after-the-fact framing of auxiliary sets of hypotheses to explain away contradicting observations is no stranger to scientific discourse either. That said, it would seem that there is a widespread consensus within the scientific community dictating that in the event of multiple theories predicting a similar outcome, simpler is better for reasons of orderliness and comprehensibility. So yes, this is Occam's razor again. Reductionism as a scientific school of thought promotes the reasoned belief that complex systems in our natural world can be understood by reducing them to combinations of simpler systems. The atomic theory, and by extension the periodic tables, listing elements in rising order based on the number of protons and electrons in the nucleus of atoms, are fine examples of this reductionist approach. And the scientific method is further hampered by the dilemma of induction, which hinges on the question of the number of observations that are required to warrant informed generalizations, and the find that even well-confirmed generalizations may at some point let us down by one single counter-observation. A school of thought dedicated to tackling this dilemma was introduced by Karl Popper, a 20th century of the Christian calendar Austrian philosopher of science, and the crux of his theory is centered on the practice of falsification. Falsification as an approach to promote the self-assumed solidity of the House of the Natural Sciences operates on the premise that in order to avoid induction ad infinitum, disproving or refuting the validity of an isolated hypothesis or conjecture based on a single instance of well-observed and carefully documented evidence to the contrary tends to be less complicated and economically more sound. Conversely, any theory resisting the test of falsification should then be accepted, if not outright, then at least provisionally. Persistent criticisms of falsification as a practical theory include the observation that the practice of falsifying one or more hypotheses in a state of isolation does not by necessity disqualify an entire theory or body of theories, and on a root level, that falsification goes against the nature of proper science in the sense that major scientific advances tend to go hand in hand with major changes in the dominant, in our case Occidental, scientific paradigm. In layman's terms, falsification ad infinitum is said to kill the creative spark that drives the natural sciences. Aha, you might say. Furthermore, falsification as a scientific strategy does not preempt the Stoic inclusion of one or more previously falsified hypotheses into a body of scientific theory by any number of beleaguered scientists. In the face of testable and repeatable counterproof, the stock and trade of falsification, scientists may and do decide to exercise their discretionary right to reject the scientifically sound falsification of one or more flawed hypotheses whenever they find their work or their person under siege, or to come up with auxiliary hypotheses to save the day and to keep potentially faulty theories afloat. According to Paul Feyerabend, a self-proclaimed mortal opponent of Karl Popper's dogmatic views on falsification, this supposedly unscientific behavior is actually the only sustainable avenue by which to promote the continued advancement of science. He too was a 20th century of the Christian calendar Austrian philosopher of science, and so a contemporary of Karl Popper, who over the course of his life came to fundamentally reject any and all prescriptive scientific methodology, and was also a vehemently outspoken adversary of the apparent procedural monopoly of the scientific method. So this is a section of chapter 11, the natural sciences. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like, subscribe to my channel. If you have questions, comments, please leave them in the comment section. For now, thank you for watching. My name is Erik van der Poel. I hope I will see you again soon. Bye bye.